What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of the sophomore release by Vinyl Theater, kind of a pop rock type band, and this album is called Origami. Today it's not just going to be me though. I've invited the LP Club on to talk about this record. We had a few potential collaborations that we were talking about doing. We decided on this one. If you have not checked out his channel, it will be linked in the description down below along with that and his Twitter account. So without further ado, I'm going to give back history, all that good stuff whenever we talk back and forth between me and Ethan. Let's go ahead and transition over. And just like that, here we have the LP Club with me to talk about this new Vinyl Theater record. What's up, Ethan?
Hey, in case you don't know, my name's Ethan. I run a channel called the LP Club on YouTube, just like Mark's, just slightly worse. And today we're
Mark. I'm Mark now. I see. You know what, Ethan? We're gonna keep that in just because I want you to remember this moment. I'm
so sorry
Ethan,
about that.
That's okay. For those of you who don't know, my name is John, and we're gonna be talking about the Vinyl Theater album today. Ethan, what is your history with Vinyl Theater?
Back when I was an obsessive 21 Pilots fanboy, I remember getting a card that said Vinyl Theater and a big Fueled by Ramen, something like that, merch package, ramen, and a very big merch package that came with the Blurry Face vinyl. And I remember really liking Breaking Up My Bones, but I think actually at this point this is one of the only songs I had heard from them before this single, this album. But I do have a few friends who were just like, are you going to review the Vinyl Theater album? So I finally added it to my schedule, you know, a few months in advance, and here we are. I'm finally getting around to a full record of theirs.
Right. And how did first impressions with you go? Because for me, I honestly, like, the first listen through, there were a few songs that really stuck out to me, and there were a few that kind of, like, didn't quite catch my attention. What were your first vibes with the album?
The first time I heard this record, I kind of left it very... I didn't feel like there was a whole lot I grabbed from it. There were a few really great songs, and even after multiple listens, there's like 2 or 3 really good songs that still stay strong here and still end up being one of them, probably one of my favorite songs of the year. But the rest of this album does kind of blend together, and still after a few listens, it does kind of bring off that vibe. But it's not a bad album. It's actually pretty okay.
Right, I would agree with that, except I think I'm feeling maybe a little bit more positively towards it, just because I don't think it's anything groundbreaking here, obviously. It's kind of like a synth meets rock type thing, a nice alternative thing, and like we said kind of before we even filmed this review, you know, it sounds like something that Alt Nation would eat up in a heartbeat, you know?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We can kind of compare it to the recent Coin release that came out, and I do like it more than that, because I think there's more standout tracks here. There's some that I'm definitely really impressed with, and overall, I don't think that there's really songs that I necessarily dislike. It's just the ones that I fail to remember.
Absolutely, and I've been really harsh on pop rock this year, I'll be really honest, because as someone who used to be just obsessed with pop rock, at this point, I don't know if I find myself coming back to all these records that much. But this record, it feels very well written, and all of it feels very well done. I mean, the instrumentation is well played, the production sounds very neat and well done. It doesn't really stick out. And there are a few songs that absolutely do, just because of the way they're written, or just some of the tones, or some of the production features on there. Not like features other people coming in, but some of the styles and etc. But it does kind of blur, and that's probably my biggest problem with this record. It's just some of the songs that don't stand out, don't make an impact, I find myself just not remembering them at all.
Right. I can see where you're coming from on that, but I found that, I guess the more I listened to it, I had the melodies of some of these tracks floating around in my head. And I think the biggest positive that I can have, other than the instrumentals for this record about Origami, I really like the lyrics and how they're not just like the mundane, typical like pop rock stuff that we normally get. You know, on a lot of these releases, you're gonna see the same thing over and over again about this relationship or this, and like, yeah, they're worked in there, but I feel like it goes deeper than that. And I love, like, like the track that opens this record up, My Fault, for example. I love that one. The way that I will say the production on it is a little bit weird on the intro of the track. It's a little bit like the synths and the guitars don't totally line up. I like the sound, but it doesn't sound like they got the final mix quite right. But as the song goes on, I love the musicality of that one and the lyrics on that one. It feels very, very heartfelt, and I think that kind of carries out throughout the rest of this. And while some of the tracks just don't even deal with relationships at all, it doesn't seem like New Machines. I really like just because of kind of that big shiny chorus on it, mixing synths, and a nice little guitar lead in there as well.
Yeah, going back to that first song, like, My Fault, the first time I heard it, I was kind of off-put by that, because, like I said, I remember in my notes I wrote kind of a screechy synth line, and it does kind of eventually blur with the guitar and the whole mix very well, and I really love the lyrics on this record, for most of the part. There's only a few songs that I'm not 100%, like, falling through with the lyrics, and those ones do here and there feel a little bit cliche, but for the most part, most of these lyrics really stand out, like My Fault. Like you said, he's very much here just kind of taking the blame for a situation, and he translates that into like a very awesome chorus with these synths really kind of swelling up behind him. I really like this song. It has a very strong drum groove that really kind of anchors it. But one of the things that I also kind of come back to of this record that makes it not 100% perfect for me is a lot of the times the vocals just seem a little bit too whiny for my taste. And I don't know if you hear that at all, but it just seems some of the times the vocals seem a bit too high for their range, or they could have worked a little bit lower.
I can definitely see what you're coming from. The first time, I didn't really know these guys that well until my girlfriend Hannah played them for me, and the first thing I said was they kind of sound like 21 Pilots in the vocal department. And I think maybe I'm more still a fan of them than you are at this point, but yeah. I think for Vinyl Theater, they're a little bit inconsistent in the vocals, you know, like some of the tracks, yeah. Like you said, I can get that. They don't really sound off-putting to me, but I think the worst case of this for me was on the song Fade Away towards the end of the record. I didn't care for that one. It just felt kind of monotonous, and the vocal performance felt not necessarily out of range, but just a little bit lazy. But that's really like the biggest complaint I have in terms of Origami. That's probably the one track that I would have to single out as not really liking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember Fade Away is probably my least favorite on this entire record. That and maybe Pull Your Weight, but I just
really?
Whoa! Wait, okay. But I feel like Fade Away, especially when you compare it to the song after that, Thank You for the Good Times, which is absolutely my favorite song on this record, it just feels very kind of, it feels monotonous, like you said. It doesn't stand out with this record, especially because you got a very simple synth guitar combo with another strong drum groove, which is definitely one of the strongest points of this record. The drums feel like they have a lot of impact in the mix, and the production really complements that. I really love the drum tones on here. But this song just, nothing really stands out. If I'm thinking correctly on this one, the climax of the song it feels very unorganized. At least that's how I wrote it. It just kind of it doesn't really click.
I can see that, but what I want to get to is Pull Your Weight, because that is definitely like in my top 3 for this record. I love it. It's got a nice big vibe to it. I'm singing along to it already. It was one of the instant favorites for me, something that clicked with me. It feels, I don't know, it kind of resonates with the listener, I feel like, because it does do a great job of, like you said, I like the way that the drums are styled on the majority of this record, and I think that they do a great job of clicking with the guitars and the synths, and even those strong vocals on this track.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the things I did notice about this track. Even if I'm not a huge fan of this one, the vocals are pretty great on this one. Like, I really love how during the verses they take kind of the instrumental a little bit farther back in the mix and kind of let the vocals really stand out there. But one of my biggest problems with this song is every single time I went through this record, at least one of these songs would feel very memorable, very strong. And I've heard this record about 4 or 5 times. This one just never clicked with me. At any point, it just kind of it just blended in again. And that's why it doesn't really click for me. All of the other songs on this record, maybe besides Fade Away, have some really great parts, and besides just that vocal delivery, nothing really stands out on this song for me.
Right. Okay, it's a fair enough comparison. I can see where you're coming from on that, but definitely going to have to agree to disagree there. What about overall on this record? What are you thinking as far as like favorites and least favorites? Because for me, I think my absolute favorite tracks, I already obviously just mentioned Pull Your Weight. Loving that one. My Fault is something that I could see myself playing all summer long. That's just one of those like windows down, fun type tracks that does have like more of like a heartfelt message, but still easy to connect with, easy to groove with. I like Speak Your Mind a lot too. how that one kind of starts off slowly, builds, kind of adds some wood to the fire, if you will, and slowly just blazes a little bit more as it goes along. And The Island, I thought, was pretty clever in terms of the lyrics. That one is really, really good. I think I like the message of it because it seems to be talking about maybe like a safe zone for someone. Maybe he's talking to a love interest or a friend or something like that, and like basically saying like talking about troubles and that sort of thing. Welcome to the island. Maybe like welcome to this safe haven where you don't have to worry about people judging you or the way that people are looking at you and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Island is probably my favorite song on here, along with Thank You for the Good Times, which I do want to talk about in just like a second. But The Island, this song is just infinitely catchy, and the lyrics are so well written. It just comes from a perspective and the framing of the song that just, it feels so honest and it works. And that's something I do like about Vinyl Theater's lyrics. They tend to a lot of times put them in the forefront, and a lot of times they don't feel like filler or just generic pop rock lyrics. And that comes across here. But this song, I picture myself, maybe because they're saying the island, like an island, but I picture myself like on the beach with that huge chorus with the guitars sounding awesome. I just love that song. It's one of the best on here. Like, I absolutely love it.
I agree with you. Now, talk to me about the closer that you really seem to love so much. Thank You for the Good Times.
So, Thank You for the Good Times seems to be one of the songs on here that just absolutely gets its tone and atmosphere perfect, along with My Fault and probably The Island. This song builds to a climax so perfectly well, and I love the way it just slowly adds a bit more, starting off with this beautiful piano melody that I love. I love that chord progression so much. As a musician, I'm slowly getting kind of bored of chord progressions and trying to write songs. This is one of those just melodies that sounds so great, I want to like copy it and just get sued for copyright. It's worth it. Yeah. Yeah, it's so beautifully written, and the vocals come in perfectly on the song. I love the way it just sounds so natural and effortless, and then it slowly adds more. I feel like there's a little bit of a plucking guitar kind of driving a little bit of melody in the background, some hints of maybe xylophone and auxiliary percussion with some melodies in the background, and slowly, finally just turns on a dime to this huge final breakdown that works effortlessly well. And I love that huge breakthrough, just the drums and the guitar come crashing in. It's definitely my favorite song off this record, just because it's so perfectly built, and then it cools back down at the end, and I love the way it just ends just slowly with that one somber note. It feels so perfectly crafted.
Right, I agree with you on the way that the outro, from that big burst of energy that you get, that's kind of like a left turn where you're like, wow, we're in the thick of it. Like, it really hits you with some heat there. And then that, like you said, coming to a final close, it feels like the closing and opening of a book, if you will. Like the first chapter all the way to the end in just like 3.5 minutes. And I do think this is a fantastic track. I didn't mention it whenever I first talked about favorites, just because I heard you at the beginning of this discussion here. I heard you say that you love that one so much. So I didn't want to steal your thunder on that one. I wanted to let you take the forefront on that one, but I don't have any disagreements with you there. The one thing I will ask, did you get kind of a Tyler Joseph vibe in the vocals on this?
Yeah, they were Tyler Joseph, obviously. Like, you can hear in some of, I guess you could say on Vessel, his voice maybe has a slightly higher register, or at least he sings a bit higher. And more recently he's come down, I guess, a little bit on Blurry Face. You can hear him going a little bit lower, or using his falsetto. But a lot of times, some of like the higher registers definitely pales comparison to Tyler Joseph. Like, it definitely comes across there. And as someone who's maybe cooled off a little bit on 21 Pilots, I still like them, but I'm not as huge as a fan as I used to be, probably back in 2015. I can definitely see that.
Shame. That's a shame, Ethan. You've sold out by not liking them anymore.
Yeah, I know.
What are you thinking as far as like an overall rating for this? Because I think, a lot of stuff we seem to agree on, but I think our biggest disagreement here is probably Pull Your Weight, because that one is stuck in my head right now. Like, I'm doing everything in me to not sing that one.
Yeah, I'm feeling probably a strong 6 on this one. I rate them out of 10. I like this record. I think it's solid, but obviously, like we said, it's nothing groundbreaking, and I can't really see myself coming back to the entire record besides 2 or 3 songs, but I do really like those songs. I definitely think this is a record worth recommending to people who, I'd say, like Coin, or like 21 Pilots, or are a big fan, avid listeners of Alt Nation, like we said.
Right. If only their label would actually promote them some, maybe they would get some more attention.
Yeah, I noticed that. I mean, like, there are just a few there are a few bands that Fueled by Ramen just seem to have nothing to do with. They don't care about them at all, and sadly these guys fall onto one of them, because even if I wasn't such a huge fan of this record, this still is a band worth supporting. It's still a band worth, you know, seeking out and listening to, at least giving it a try, because I think this is definitely a good record.
Right. I'll agree with you. And from as far as my rating on this, obviously you guys know that I go on a scale of 5. Translated to Ethan's scale on a 10, it would be a 7 out of 10. But I'm going to go with a strong 3.5. Honestly, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Sometimes I listen through this and I was like, you know, I might give this a 4. But honestly, I think a 3.5 is going to do it justice here. It's a really, really good record to me. And it's something that I'm glad that we got this after kind of an extended wait. I wasn't sure if Fueled by Ramen was going to end up shelving this album, but then they dropped 4 singles, and here we are a few months later with very little promo on it. So I do hope that this review has convinced you to at least give it a listen, decide for yourself. And Ethan, is there anything you want to add before we go?
Just in case you forget to shout me out in the beginning, my channel is the LP Club, and I think he'll link my channel on my Twitter below. Yeah, I also do reviews, like he says. I don't really do much else recently, but yeah, I have a ton of stuff coming up, so check it out. Thanks.
Thanks for watching the collab review today, guys. Be sure to leave a like on it if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel, because friends don't let friends go unsubscribed. You can subscribe to Ethan's channel right below me, right here. Click that little annotation here. If you're able to, help me out on Patreon. It's the annotation over here in the corner, or else another recent video right here. All of my socials are linked in the description, and I'll see you very soon right here on ARTV.